The crystalline archives of the Galactic Council stretched for miles beneath the surface of Centauri Prime, their transparent corridors glowing with the accumulated knowledge of 1,000 civilizations. Junior archivist Amanda Mitchell walked these halls daily, but something felt different today. The usual soft blue luminescence of the data crystals seemed disturbed by an unusual crimson pulse emanating from Section 7, Sublevel 3, the Ancient Laws Repository. She approached the pulsing crystal, her handheld scanner displaying readings she'd never seen before. The crystal's surface was warm to the touch, unlike the cool smoothness of its neighbors. As she traced her fingers along its faceted edge, glyphs began to materialize within its depths, forming words that made her breath catch in her throat. Never enrage the children of Earth. The warning hung there, stark and simple, lacking the usual 1,000-page appendices and clarifying subsections that accompanied most galactic laws. Just those 5 words, pulsing with an intensity that seemed to demand attention. Fascinating, isn't it? The deep voice startled her. Chief Archivist James Walker stood in the corridor entrance, his silver hair catching the crystal's red glow. In 300 years of service, I've never seen another law quite like it. Amanda straightened her uniform, trying to maintain professional composure. Sir, I don't understand. Every other law in this section has extensive documentation, historical context, legal precedents. But this, she gestured at the crystal. It's more like a warning sign than a law. Walker approached slowly, his weathered hand reaching out to touch the crystal's surface. The pulsing light intensified at his touch, as if recognizing an old friend. Tell me, Mitchell, what do you know about the fall of the Drachnid Imperium? The standard historical package, sir. They were the dominant force in the galaxy until their collapse roughly 2 centuries ago. Their territory was divided among their former subject races, and they're now confined to their homeworld under permanent observation. Walker's laugh held no humor. The sanitized version, then. Did they tell you what caused their fall? What force could bring down an empire that had stood for 10,000 years? Amanda accessed her neural database, frowning at the results. The records cite internal political instability and economic collapse. But she paused, noticing a pattern. The timing of those events seems unusually concentrated, almost as if something, or someone, engineered their destruction. Walker finished. He pulled a small device from his pocket, and a holographic display sprang to life between them. It showed a star map, with one small point of light pulsing in an otherwise unremarkable sector. This was humanity's territory when they first achieved faster-than-light travel. Barely a dozen colonies, their ships were primitive by Drachnid standards, their weapons practically antiques. The hologram shifted, showing the same sector 6 months later. Amanda gasped. The neat, orderly borders of the Drachnid Imperium had begun to fragment, like cracks spreading through glass. The Drachnids made a mistake that countless species had made before them. Walker continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. They looked at humanity's limited territory, their scattered settlements, their seemingly basic technology, and saw an easy conquest. What they didn't understand, what none of us understood, was the humans had spent their entire history preparing for this moment, though they never knew it. Preparing. How? Walker's eyes reflected the crystal's pulsing light as he turned to face her. Every war they fought among themselves taught them adaptation. Every crisis forced innovation. Every defeat seeded the lessons for future victories. When the Drachnids destroyed that research station, he shook his head. They thought they were dealing with just another spacefaring species. Instead, they had awakened something that had climbed to planetary dominance through countless smaller wars that had split the atom while still fighting with projectile weapons that had reached the stars while their nations still pointed missiles at each other. Amanda looked back at the pulsing morning, seeing it with new eyes. This law, it's not just regulation, is it? It's a memorial. No, Mitchell. Walker's voice carried the weight of centuries. It's a survival guide. Commander Elizabeth Cooper stood at the viewport of the EDS Nightingale, her reflection ghosting against the stars beyond. The crew called her Steel Eyes behind her back, a nickname earned from her unflinching gaze during combat situations. Right now, those eyes tracked the massive Drachnid warships as they methodically placed their boundary markers around New Haven Colony. Status update from the surface. Commander. Lieutenant Sarah Reynolds' voice carried barely contained anger. The colonists are maintaining calm, but the Drachnids have deployed their administrative units near the main settlement. Cooper's jaw tightened. She'd seen this pattern 3 times already. Always the same methodical approach, always the same euphemisms. Administrative units meant occupation forces. Integration protocols meant cultural suppression. Strategic resource allocation meant systematic theft. "What's our current fleet status?" Cooper asked, though she already knew the answer. The Nightingale and her 2 escort vessels were humanity's only military presence in the sector, a deliberate choice that now seemed to be backfiring spectacularly. "The Drachnids have positioned 6 capital ships at the system's edge," Reynolds reported. "Their commander, Supreme Executor Kralfax, is requesting your presence for a diplomatic consultation regarding the colony's new status." Cooper allowed herself a small, knowing smile. The Drachnids were following their standard playbook perfectly. Overwhelming force, diplomatic doublespeak, and the absolute certainty that they were dealing with just another primitive species learning to crawl among the stars. "Send my acceptance," Cooper ordered, straightening her dress uniform. And Reynolds. "Initiate protocol Sleeping Dragon. Authorization Cooper 77 Echo." Reynolds' eyes widened slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. "Protocol confirmed, Commander. Should I inform the civilian leadership?" "They already know." Cooper checked her reflection one final time. Everyone's playing their part. The Drachnid diplomatic shuttle was exactly what Cooper expected. All gleaming metallic surfaces and intimidating scale, designed to overwhelm lesser species with its grandeur. Supreme Executor Kralfax waited in the conference chamber, his scaled form towering over the human delegation. "Commander Cooper," the translator rendered his rumbling voice into standard English, "we appreciate your reasonable approach to this transition. Many species resist the inevitable, to their detriment." Cooper kept her expression neutral, even as she noted the positions of every Drachnid guard in the room. "The safety of our colonists is our primary concern, Supreme Executor." Of course. Kralfax gestured magnanimously with his upper limbs. "The Drachnid Imperium has vast experience in uplifting primitive, forgive me, developing species. Your technology, while admirable for its level, requires significant improvement. Your military capabilities are limited." He paused, studying Cooper's reaction. "This is not a criticism, merely an observation." "No offense taken," Cooper replied smoothly. "We're well aware of our technological limitations. Our ship's sensors can barely track your fleet's movements, and our weapons would be useless against your shields." Kralfax's translator took a moment to process her words, and Cooper watched understanding ripple across his alien features. She had just violated every diplomatic protocol by openly admitting weakness, something no species with any pride would do. "You are surprisingly forthcoming, Commander." Cooper smiled, and for just a moment, Kralfax saw something in those steel eyes that triggered a primordial warning in his species' collective memory. "Supreme Executor, humanity has a saying, pride goes before a fall. We don't take pride in our military technology because we've never needed to. You see, we learned something during our bloodiest wars. The most dangerous predator isn't the one with the biggest claws." She stood, smoothing her uniform. "It's the one that makes its prey feel safe until the very last moment." As Cooper's shuttle returned to the Nightingale, her comm unit chirped with an encrypted message. "Protocol Sleeping Dragon confirmed. All cells activated. Operation Thunderbolt begins in 6 hours." Cooper's smile remained, but now it held an edge, sharp enough to cut stars. The Drachnids had made the same mistake as countless Earth predators before them. They'd confused humanity's restraint for weakness, their preparation for primitiveness, and their patience for fear. They were about to learn why Earth's history books were written in blood. Dr. Michael Harrison's hands trembled as he stared at the holographic display in the United Nations Security Council chamber. The recording from Research Station Aurora played again, showing his wife Catherine's final transmission. She stood at her research console, their daughter Emily clutching her lab coat, as she calmly reported the Drachnid warship's approach. "This is Research Station Aurora conducting final data backup." Catherine's voice remained steady even as warning klaxons blared in the background. "We have 342 civilians aboard, including 78 children. Our status is non-military research facility, conducting approved xenobotanical studies. We are broadcasting our civilian designation on all frequencies." The recording showed the massive shape of a Drachnid dreadnought emerging from hyperspace. Emily, always curious, pointed at the ship with childish wonder. "Daddy will want to see this when he gets back," she said, not understanding the fear in the adult's eyes. "This is Research Station Aurora to approaching Drachnid vessel." Catherine's voice took on an edge of desperation. "We are a civilian facility. Repeat, civilian facility. We have children aboard." The transmission ended in a flash of light. General Jessica Martinez stood before the assembled Security Council, her dress uniform adorned with combat medals from Earth's pre-space conflicts. Her voice cut through the stunned silence like a blade. "The Drachnids claim Aurora was harboring military assets," she said, each word measured and precise. "They have provided no evidence. Their own scans, which we intercepted, showed exactly what we claimed. Our research station studying alien plant life, staffed by families." The Chinese representative leaned forward. "What was the strategic value of the station?" "None." Martinez's response cracked like a gunshot. "That's what makes this different. They didn't destroy Aurora for any military purpose. They did it to break our will, to show us the price of resistance." The Russian delegate's knuckles whitened on his armrest. "They have made a grave miscalculation." Indeed. Martinez activated another hologram, showing the deployment of Drachnid forces across human space. "We've maintained a defensive posture, appearing weak, disorganized. Operation Sleeping Dragon, initiated by Commander Cooper, has convinced them we're barely holding together. They expect us to capitulate now, to surrender in fear of more civilian casualties." She paused, looking each council member in the eye. "They don't understand what they've done. Throughout our history, humanity has waged war for land, for resources, for ideology. We've fought ourselves more than we've known peace, but there has always been one line, one trigger that unites us completely." Dr. Harrison spoke, his voice raw with grief and rage. "They killed our children." Martinez nodded grimly. "The Drachnids believe they've broken us. Instead, they've awakened something they never accounted for in their strategic calculations, a species that evolved not just as predators, but as protectors. We named our deadliest weapons after gods of war, our most powerful deterrents after forces of nature, because deep in our collective memory, we remember what we become when our young are threatened." The council chamber's lights dimmed as Martinez brought up a new tactical display. "Operation Thunderbolt is already in motion, but I'm proposing something larger. A response that will make the galaxy remember why even Earth's prehistoric predators learned to fear us." The vote was unanimous. As the council members filed out, Martinez approached Dr. Harrison. "We recovered something from Aurora's final data burst," she said softly, handing him a small data crystal. "Your daughter's last research project. She was studying earth flowers that could grow in space." Harrison clutched the crystal, tears finally falling. "What do you need from me?" Martinez's eyes held the same cold fury that burned across human space. "We need your expertise in xenobotany, because when we're done, we're going to plant earth roses on every world we take from them. A reminder that humanity's children will bloom among the stars long after the Drachnid Imperium is nothing but dust." The galaxy was about to learn why human mythology didn't just have gods of war, it had gods of vengeance. Admiral Thomas Reynolds stood in the CIC of the EDS Shadow Strike, watching as hundreds of human vessels scattered across the holographic display. To any conventional military strategist, it looked like chaos, a complete abandonment of established fleet doctrine. To Reynolds, known as Ghost among his peers, it was beautiful. Status report on Operation Hydra, he commanded, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made him legendary among Earth's naval forces. Commander Sarah Matthews stepped forward, her tactical display highlighting different vessel groups in real time. Phase 1 complete, sir. The Drachnids are tracking our apparent retreat exactly as predicted. Their main fleet elements are moving to secure our abandoned colonies. Reynolds nodded, his gray eyes tracking the movement of enemy forces and our special operations teams. Navy SEALs Team 6 has already infiltrated the Drachnid supply base in the Proxima sector, Matthews reported. Captain Jackson's Rangers are in position near their communications hub at Epsilon Eridani. Master Chief Peterson's Marine Force Recon Unit has gone dark, exactly as scheduled. The Admiral allowed himself a small smile. The Drachnids had studied human military history, but they'd drawn all the wrong conclusions. They saw humanity's centuries of internal conflict as a sign of primitiveness rather than what it truly was, and crucible that had forged the perfect warriors for this moment. Sir, Lieutenant Commander James Chen's voice carried an edge of excitement. We're receiving the first data streams from Dr. Harrison's Xenobotany team. They've successfully modified Earth vegetation to survive in Drachnid environments. Operation Garden is ready for Phase 2. Reynolds touched a control, expanding the tactical display. Show me Team 6's approach vector. The hologram shifted, revealing a dozen small stealth craft approaching the massive Drachnid supply base. These weren't the sleek warships the enemy expected. They were something far more dangerous. Each vessel carried veterans of Earth's most elite special forces, men and women who had spent their lives mastering the art of unconventional warfare. The Drachnids expect us to fight like every other species they conquered, Reynolds mused. They're looking for fleet engagements, for battles that can be won with superior technology and overwhelming force. He gestured to the scattered human ships. Instead, we're giving them something they've never faced. A war without fronts, without rules, without mercy. Matthews studied the display. They're already calling it madness in their communications, sir. They can't understand why we deliberately weaken ourselves by spreading so thin. Because they don't understand what we are, Reynolds replied. Humanity didn't become Earth's apex predator through brute force alone. We did it by being adaptable, by turning every environment to our advantage, by learning from every defeat. The tactical display flickered as the first reports came in. Team 6 had breached the supply base's outer defenses without firing a shot, using climbing techniques perfected in Earth's Special Forces training. The Rangers had already compromised the communications hub security systems using hacking methods developed during centuries of cyber warfare. Sir, Chen reported, Master Chief Peterson's team has surfaced. They've successfully attached the modified Earth seedlings to the environmental systems of 3 major Drachnid colony worlds. Dr. Harrison's biological markers are already spreading through their atmosphere processors. Reynolds watched as the first real-time footage arrived from the supply base. The Drachnid guards, with their superior technology and overwhelming physical strength, never saw the human operators coming. Earth's special forces moved like ghosts through their security systems, applying centuries of close-quarters combat experience to an interstellar battlefield. The Drachnids believe war is about strength, Reynolds said softly. They're about to learn what every human warrior knows. Victory belongs to those who adapt, who innovate, who strike from the shadows. As reports of successful operations flooded in from across Drachnid space, Reynolds remembered an ancient Earth saying, "We're not fighting their war. We're making them fight ours." The message was clear. Humanity hadn't scattered in fear. They had dissolved into the stars like predators taking up hunting positions. The galaxy was about to witness why Earth's history books spoke of armies that conquered continents by becoming shadows in the night. Captain Rebecca Rafe Anderson stood in the darkened bridge of the stealth carrier Shadowhawk, watching thermal readings of the Drachnid supply convoy through her tactical display. 6 massive cargo haulers, protected by 3 destroyer-class escorts, moved through the darkness between stars. They had no idea they were being hunted. Signal from Wolfpack Actual. Lieutenant Mike Torres reported from his communication station. Marine teams are in position. Sergeant Thompson's squad has breached the lead hauler's outer hull. No alerts triggered. Anderson nodded, her fingers drumming silently on the armrest of her command chair. The Shadowhawk and her sister ships represented humanity's response to overwhelming Drachnid technological superiority, not by matching it, but by circumventing it entirely. Status of their escort formation, she asked. Still maintaining standard patrol patterns, Commander Lisa Chen replied from Tactical. Their sensors are calibrated for capital ships and large energy signatures. They're not equipped to detect our infiltration pods. Anderson allowed herself a grim smile. The Drachnids had built their entire military doctrine around the assumption that bigger meant better. Their massive warships were designed to fight equally massive opponents. No one had ever thought to defend against humans who had spent centuries perfecting the art of asymmetrical warfare. Signal from Thompson, Torres announced. They've reached the cargo hold, confirming primary target. Weapons-grade reactor cores bound for the Drachnid fleet at Proxima Centauri. Perfect. Anderson activated her neural link to the fleet tactical network. All teams, execute Phase 2. Remember your training. Just like we practiced in the Mariana Trench facilities. The Shadowhawk's sensors captured the beauty of what followed. Sergeant David Hunter Thompson's Marines moved through the cargo hauler's corridors like water through cracks, applying close-quarters combat techniques perfected in Earth's urban warfare centers. Their powered armor, reverse-engineered from salvaged Drachnid tech, but modified with human ingenuity, made them nearly invisible to internal sensors. First blood, Chen reported with professional detachment. Thompson's team has neutralized the engineering crew. No alarms. Dr. Harrison's modified plant spores are being introduced into the life support system. Anderson watched as green dots representing her Marines spread through all 6 cargo haulers simultaneously. The Drachnids, for all their advanced technology, had never encountered an enemy that treated spacecraft like underwater caverns or urban ruins. They had no defense against warriors who had trained in every environment Earth could offer. "Ma'am," Torres called out, "we're detecting increased communication from the escort vessels. They're starting to realize something's wrong." "Too late," Anderson replied. "Signal all teams. Spring the trap." The Drachnid escorts suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't effectively target. Human boarding pods, their hulls coated with energy-absorbing materials developed for deep-sea exploration vehicles, attached to their hulls like remeras on sharks. Marine teams breached their hulls using cutting tools originally designed for underwater salvage operations. Wolfpack 2 and 3 reporting success, Chen announced. All cargo haulers secured. Engineering systems compromised. Dr. Harrison's biological markers are spreading through their filtration systems. Anderson opened a channel to all teams. "Remember Aurora," she said simply. The response came back in a chorus of determined voices. "Remember Aurora." Within 20 minutes, the entire convoy had been neutralized. No distress calls were sent. No warnings reached the Drachnid fleet. The only sign anything had happened was the slight course change as the cargo haulers, now under human control, diverted toward a new destination. "Send word to Admiral Reynolds," Anderson ordered. "Operation Night Strike is complete. The supply line to Proxima Centauri is now compromised. And ensure Dr. Harrison gets the environmental readings from his spores." As the Shadowhawk disappeared back into the void, Anderson reflected on the irony. The Drachnids had expected to fight warships. Instead, they were being dismantled by hunters who had learned their craft in Earth's oceans, mountains, and urban centers. They were about to learn why humans had always been most dangerous when fighting unconventionally. After all, Earth's history wasn't written by those who had the biggest weapons. It was written by those who found new ways to use them. Dr. William Wild Bill Parker stood in the center of Luna Base's Advanced Research Division, surrounded by holographic displays showing the latest breakthrough in human-alien hybrid technology. The captured Drachnid battlecruiser floated in the massive underground hangar below, its hull now covered in scaffolding and diagnostic equipment. "Show me the neural interface readings again," he ordered, pushing his silver-rimmed glasses up his nose. The elderly scientist had refused cybernetic eye corrections, claiming his old-fashioned spectacles helped him think better. "Processing now, Doctor." His AI assistant displayed the complex data streams. The integration between human thought patterns and Drachnid control systems is holding at 97% efficiency. Parker grinned as Major Catherine Phoenix Rodriguez entered the lab, still wearing her flight suit from the latest test run. Her dark hair was matted with sweat, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "How did she handle, Major?" Parker asked, already pulling up the flight data. "Like nothing I've ever flown before," Rodriguez answered, joining him at the central display. "The neural link you developed doesn't just let us control their ships, it lets us understand them. I can feel the engine's power like it's my own heartbeat." Parker nodded, expanding a technical schematic. The Drachnids built their technology to be perfect, unchangeable. They never considered that perfection might be their weakness. Their systems are so integrated that once we learn to speak their language, we could make their entire network sing our song. Rodriguez finished. She pointed to a section of the display. "The quantum resonance chambers we captured last week. I think we can modify them using the principles from old Earth submarine sonar." Parker's eyes lit up. "Yes. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons and kinetic impacts. But if we introduce a harmonic frequency pattern based on underwater acoustics, we could shatter their defenses from the inside out," Rodriguez concluded. She paused, studying another readout. "Dr. Harrison's botanical interface is ready for integration too. The modified Earth plants don't just survive in their systems now, they're enhancing them." Parker brought up footage from the latest field tests. The hybrid strike craft they'd created looked like something from humanity's deepest nightmares. Sleek Drachnid technology merged with Earth's more aggressive design philosophy. Where Drachnid ships were all geometric perfection, these new vessels bore the organic curves of predatory sea creatures. Lieutenant Commander Chen's team cracked their targeting algorithms yesterday, Parker noted, bringing up more data. "Turns out their perfect mathematical approach has a fundamental flaw. It can't adapt to human unpredictability." Rodriguez laughed. They built their entire civilization on the idea that technology should be flawless, unchanging. They never understood what we learned in our first space race. Sometimes the best solutions come from desperate improvisation. The main display shifted to show the production facilities spreading across Luna's far side. Dozens of captured Drachnid vessels were being systematically stripped, studied, and rebuilt according to human principles. Each one emerged as something new, not just a hybrid of technologies, but a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to learn, adapt, and improve. "Latest report from Admiral Reynolds," Parker's AI announced. "The first wave of converted ships has reached the front. The Drachnids, they're refusing to believe their sensor readings. They can't accept that we've not only mastered their technology but improved it." Parker touched a control, bringing up the next phase of modifications. "Send word to the fleet. The quantum resonance modifications are ready for deployment. And inform Dr. Harrison that his biological interfaces have been successfully integrated into the life support systems." Rodriguez studied the readouts from her test flight. "You know what's really going to break them? It's not just that we're beating them. It's that we're proving their entire philosophy wrong. They believe technology should be perfect and unchanging. We're showing them that true perfection comes from constant evolution." As they watched another hybrid vessel emerge from the production facility, its hull gleaming with the merged technologies of two civilizations, Parker remembered an old quote from Earth's first space age. "Necessity is the mother of invention." The Drachnids were about to learn that they had created the greatest necessity humanity had ever faced, and humanity's response would rewrite the rules of warfare forever. Colonel Marcus Checkmate Sullivan stood before the holographic war room deep within Perseus Base, watching the Drachnid Empire tear itself apart. Red warning indicators bloomed across the display like deadly flowers, each representing another system falling into chaos. "Report from Operation Prometheus," Lieutenant Emma Reeves announced, her voice steady despite the excitement visible in her eyes. "The modified Earth plants have reached full saturation in their atmospheric processors. Dr. Harrison's psychotropic pollen is affecting Drachnid leadership exactly as predicted." Sullivan nodded, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical displays. 20 years of psychological warfare experience on Earth had taught him that even the mightiest empire could be broken from within. The Drachnids, with their rigid hierarchy and unwavering belief in their superiority, were particularly vulnerable. "Show me the command structure analysis," he ordered. The display shifted, revealing a complex web of Drachnid military and political leaders. Nearly half the indicators pulsed with an angry yellow, paranoia, and instability. A quarter burned red. Complete psychological breakdown. Supreme Commander Kralfax executed 3 of his own fleet admirals this morning. Commander Jack Morrison reported from his intelligence station. He's convinced they're part of a human infiltration plot. The evidence he cited was their suspicious competence in recent battles. Sullivan allowed himself a grim smile. "And the colonial governors? Falling like dominoes," Morrison replied. "The modified pollen affects their higher reasoning centers first. They're seeing conspiracies everywhere. 2 major colony worlds have already declared independence, claiming the central government has been compromised by human influence." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the command center. The Drachnids had dismissed humans as primitive, never realizing that Earth's long history of psychological warfare would be their undoing. Every aspect of Operation Prometheus had been calculated to exploit their psychological weaknesses. "New report from Captain Anderson's Wolfpack," Reeves announced. "Their supply line interdiction has reached critical mass. Drachnid outer colonies are reporting food shortages, but the Central Command refuses to believe their distress calls. They're convinced it's another human deception." Sullivan brought up footage from their deep-cover surveillance drones. The once mighty Drachnid fleets were scattered, chasing shadows and phantom threats. Patrol groups fired on each other, each convinced the other had been infiltrated by humans. The rigid command structure that had once been their strength now accelerated their collapse. "Message from Admiral Reynolds," Morrison called out. "The hybrid fleet is in position. They're asking for authorization to begin Phase 3. "Granted," Sullivan responded. "And make sure Dr. Harrison gets the environmental data he requested. His botanical warfare has exceeded all expectations." The holographic display updated in real time as human ships, now enhanced with reversed engineered Drachnid technology, began their final push. But they weren't targeting military installations or fleet concentrations. Instead, they struck at the Empire's psychological pressure points. Communication hubs, cultural centers, symbolic monuments. Civilian unrest spreading through their core worlds, Reeves reported. The pollen's effects are cascading through their population centers. Their own security forces are turning on government officials, claiming they've been mentally compromised. Sullivan watched as another sector descended into chaos. The Drachnids had built their empire on absolute control and unwavering order. Now that very rigidity was their downfall. They had no protocols for dealing with an enemy that turned their own minds against them. "Sir," Morrison's voice carried a note of awe. "We're receiving surrender offers from 3 major fleet groups. Their commanders are requesting asylum, claiming their high command has lost touch with reality." "Accept the surrenders," Sullivan ordered. "Make sure they understand that cooperation will be rewarded. And send word to General Martinez. Tell her that Operation Prometheus has achieved its primary objectives. The Drachnid Empire isn't just being defeated, It's experiencing a complete psychological collapse. As the indicators of imperial stability continued to fall, Sullivan remembered an ancient Earth saying, "The mind is the final battlefield." The Drachnids had prepared for every type of warfare, except the one humanity had mastered first: the art of breaking an enemy's will to fight. Ambassador Richard Steel Tone Foster stood before the Galactic Council, his voice carrying the weight of Earth's victory and grief. The massive chamber, with representatives from 1,000 worlds, had fallen into complete silence. Above them, holographic displays showed the final statistics of the war, the once mighty Drachnid Empire reduced to a single sector of controlled space. "We do not come seeking reparations," Foster declared, his gray hair catching the light from the chamber's crystalline dome. "We do not demand territory or resources. Humanity asks for only one thing: a law written into the foundation of galactic civilization itself." The council leader, a towering Centaurian, leaned forward. "You achieved what no species has managed in 10,000 years. The Drachnid Empire's fall has reshaped the galaxy, yet you ask for merely a law." Foster smiled, but there was steel beneath it. Not merely a law, a warning. The chamber's holographic displays shifted, showing scenes from the war. The hybrid ships that merged human ingenuity with Drachnid technology. The special forces operations that turned the Empire's own supply lines against it. Dr. Harrison's modified Earth plants blooming in conquered world's atmosphere processors. Humanity spent its history preparing for this moment without knowing it. Foster continued, "Every war we fought taught us adaptation. Every defeat seeded future victories. When the Drachnids destroyed Research Station Aurora, they thought they were breaking our will. Instead, they awakened something they never accounted for in their calculations. The displays showed new images, Earth roses blooming on former Drachnid worlds, their modified genetics allowing them to thrive in alien soil. Each flower marked a victory, a reminder planted by Dr. Harrison's teams. The law we propose is simple." Foster's voice hardened. "Never enrage the children of Earth. No appendices, no subsections, no diplomatic qualifications. Just those 5 words, written in warning glyphs that every species can understand." Commander Cooper stepped forward, her steel eyes now legendary among both human and alien forces. "We're not seeking to threaten the galaxy. We're offering wisdom bought with blood." The council leader studied them carefully. "And the Drachnid remnant will be contained to their homeworld," Cooper replied. "Under observation, but not subjugated. They've learned their lesson. The roses blooming on their colony worlds will remind them." The council chambers erupted in discussion. Foster watched as species after species registered their votes. The law passed unanimously. Junior Archivist Amanda Mitchell looked up from a historical record, meeting Chief Archivist Walker's gaze. The crystal containing the law still pulsed its crimson warning. "The roses," she said softly. "They're still blooming on those worlds, aren't they?" Walker nodded, modified by Dr. Harrison's team to be eternal blooming, a living monument to both victory and loss. "Some call them Aurora's tears." Mitchell touched the crystal surface gently. "It's not just a law or a warning, is it? It's a memorial to everyone on that research station, to all the children. And a reminder," Walker added, his eyes distant. "Humanity didn't become the galaxy's apex predator through conquest. We did it by showing the galaxy what happens when someone threatens our future, our children." As they walked through the archive's crystalline corridors, Mitchell noticed something she'd missed before. In every section containing records of the war, tiny earth roses grew from specially designed planters, their petals catching the light from the data crystals. "Life finds a way," Walker quoted the ancient saying. "But humanity makes a way. Remember that, Mitchell. It's why the law pulses red, why the roses still bloom, why even now, centuries later, species throughout the galaxy understand one simple truth." Mitchell completed the thought. "Never enrage the children of Earth. The roses continued their eternal vigil, a testament to humanity's promise that no matter how far they spread among the stars, they would never forget Aurora. And neither would the galaxy.